Good morning. So I'm going to do it kind of backwards. I'm going to first talk about our more recent project. The last time I was here, if you remember, I showed a short, like 6-7 minute teaser reel on a film called The New Normal, which is really like a companion film to ground operations because we're looking at the caregivers, the military caregivers, the wives, the mothers, the husbands of wounded veterans. So I'm happy to announce that, though it's not personally for us, that there is a new national campaign called Hidden Heroes, and Tom Hanks is their spokesperson. It's the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, whose mission is supporting military caregivers. So you may start to see PSAs on TV with Tom Hanks, which they should have hired us. They're really kind of cheesy, but there'll be these ads on, and they're starting to look for what they're calling hidden heroes cities. So they're working with particular cities to collaborate and find out what the safety net is in each town for caregivers, what services are there, where are the holes and they need help, and that kind of thing. So I think that's a really pragmatic approach, and that's going to start rolling out, and I'm sure will continue for many years. Because as you know, we're not going to see this go away. PTS can come up years and years later and then just slam you in the back of the head and drop you. So, and traumatic brain injury, I know in our new film, The New Normal, working with John and Emily over in Hawaii, John, he was 8 years before he ever had any symptoms. And then suddenly his whole life changed. And he got a concussion shock of TBI. He wasn't in a Humvee, he was like maybe a block away between buildings, and the blast came down between the buildings and threw him. And so now it's like 8-9 years later, and his migraines are getting worse, not better. So he's getting 3 to 4 migraines a week now. So that means, of course, he can't work a regular job anywhere. So fortunately, they're developing a community farm over in Hilo, and so he can work when he can work. But it's a reminder that we're going to have to look at this long-term and look for long-term solutions. And for caregivers, that's extremely important because they have got to have a break. They've got to have support because they're holding up the whole house of cards. They're trying to get the kids to school on time and soccer practice and get the husband to the VA, and still they're usually working some kind of a job because the husband very often can't, to bring in more income to supplement disability. So it's something that as a community, we might want to look at and start to say, who do we have in our community that we need to find better support for? Where we are with the film is kind of, my filmmaker partner, Ray Singer, his wife has come on board as a producer with me because, quite frankly, after spending 7 years on the last one and still not making my particular investment back, I really need to see some executive producers step up with some big checks and help us get this moving, or it's probably not going to happen. So I'm happy that Eugenia has joined us, and we will start looking more in earnest. And now we do have our cast list of who we'd like to cover, and it's really wonderful because one woman, Mexican-American woman, is a neuropsychiatric person living in Texas who's doing her specialty is traumatic brain injury, and she's a caregiver. So she'll be wonderful. And then we have like an African-American dressmaker, hat maker. Her husband is a pastor, and she's like dressmaking and hat making for all the women outside of Atlanta. And if you've never been to church in the South on Sunday in a black church, you don't know that that's a whole world big hats and beautiful dresses. So she's very interesting. We have a woman who's just a cheer squad leader. She's got 7 kids. Her parents moved in with them. She's got 2 of her kids are foster kids. And, you know, it's just, there are all of these very different kind of women. And then one of the people we've got in the film is a man. And Don is, they're from New Mexico, and he's a very striking looking man with a long silver ponytail. He's missing both legs, is in a wheelchair, but he is his wife's caregiver because she did the death detail in bringing bodies home from Iraq, and she's got a lot of stuff because of that. So they're working, and they have an outreach program in New Mexico where they're teaching veterans to farm, and they're doing fishing trips, and they're doing all kinds of different things there. So we have a very interesting mix of people in the film. So let's hope that film gets made. And with regard to ground operations, I'm going to be showing it tonight at Cal Lutheran. I have a good schedule for the rest of the fall. For Veterans Day, I'm really excited to be taking it to Pennsylvania, to the Rodale Institute. And the Rodale Institute is really the grandfather of the organic farming movement. They coined the term, that's where it started. They've done 30-year field trials where they've compared conventionally grown crops, soy and corn, with organically grown, you know, in different plots, and proven that organic has similar yields and actually better yields in drought years, 30% better yields. So the Rodale Institute is like, to me, it's like being able to play Carnegie Hall, you know, with the film, because they're such an inspiration. But I'm taking the film to Arizona, to Phoenix and Tucson, and I've been invited back to Spokane to show it again. It's showing at a shellfish growers conference up in the Pacific Northwest with a veteran who's a shellfish farmer and wanting to get more veterans into that. So the film is going still well, and coming up in early December, we have the annual Farmer Veteran Coalition Conference. And Ray and I are very pleased that for the 2nd year in a row, we're going to be filming the conference. So then what happens is we put together like highlights reels of certain speakers and panels and one thing or another, because then it becomes YouTube material and social media material for everybody to use. So that keeps the stories spinning out, which is really helpful because film has a way of touching people's hearts and emotions in a way that just statistics and articles and stuff can really glaze your eyes over. So we're really happy to be doing that filming. And one of the things we're going to be working on at the conference, I've been really concerned because I think I spoke to you before about these veteran training farms where they're operated by veterans who are training other veterans in to organic farming and ranching, and they're incredibly successful because not only do you get the job training, but you get the peer support as well. And there's nothing like one-to-one peer support for combat vets. I mean, that's where they can really talk their truth and be in the company of people who truly understand. It's very different. I mean, they're not talking to their wives about this stuff, and they're rarely talking to shrinks about this stuff either. So, but sadly this year I've seen 3 of them, well, 2 of them have gone out of business, and another 2 that I know are teetering on the edge. And it's because when you're running a training farm, you're not a profit model, right? I mean, you may make some money with your CSA or selling at the farmer's market, but you're an educational model. So because a lot of time goes to case management, training, and that kind of thing. So they need supplemental income, right, to keep rolling. And what breaks my heart is that in our film is the Veterans Farm, which is one of the first that started, and you may remember it. It's a redheaded guy from Florida, and they set up these blueberries, high bush blueberries, so guys could work in wheelchairs and stuff. Well, Adam was a presidential he got the highest civilian award from President Obama just a couple of years ago. In 2015, they impacted the life of over 700 veterans in agriculture, either introducing it to them, training them, giving them further training, one thing or another. So, I mean, 700 guys from this one farm. And he couldn't keep going this year because the USDA didn't refund him. Because there's this little small pool of money, because Congress cut the funds in half. They said, we'll add veterans. Everybody went, yay! We'll cut the money in half for the whole program. That wasn't so good. So now Adam's Farm, so what happens is what I call grant roulette, where it doesn't matter how good your program is. One year you get $100,000, and then the next year they're giving it to Haitian immigrants. And then the next year they're giving it to another veteran farm that gets $100,000, but then the next year they get nothing. Well, you can't operate an educational program that way. So we're starting to lose these farms. So, and I'm seeing it because, I'm traveling around the country and I'm keeping in touch with a lot of these different people. So I asked and was given permission to convene a meeting at the conference this year on how we can find more sustainable funding for these farms, these training farms. And part of it may be leveraging Congress, because we've got a whole new administration coming in and new Congress members coming in, and whoever they are, they're still going to have policies and programs. So our thinking is to hit the ground running early as the new administration comes in and start lobbying to get that amount in the beginning farmer and rancher program brought back up to where it was supposed to be, because they cut it in half. So instead of 10 million, we're going to lobby to get it back up to the 20 million that used to be in the budget. But we'll be looking at other things. I did some research and realized that during World War I, President Woodrow Wilson used War Department money to fund the school garden programs and the Women's Land Army, because when all the guys were gone, the women were doing a lot of the farming, right? Well, the War Department actually funded that for food security. So I'm thinking, why not get the War Department to fund that again? So we're looking at a lot of different, both private and public ways. We're going to have a meeting to say, how can we work as a group to start getting more sustained funding for these training farms? Because, when I started this project 7 years ago, we needed 1 million new farmers. Well, we may have a few thousand that have stepped up, but we really still need that 1 million farmers. So if we're going to be serious about this and have food security in this country, let's do what we need to do to support those entities that are really training the farmers and getting them on the land working. I can tell you also, as good news, that there's a lot more attention from land trusts around the country to start using local land trusts as well as, national, to start making that land available to young farmers. And not just veterans, young farmers in general. There's a gal named Severin. Boy, she's got a long name. It's like Von something Fleming. And Severine, her father owns a ranch in this valley now, and she comes here sometimes. And she's just a pistol. She's a young woman, I'd say, maybe 30. And she is on fire for agrarian reform, because half the farmland in this country is going to change hands in about the next 10 to 15 years. We've got a huge land transfer that's going to be happening. And so that's another piece of the puzzle, is looking at how can we transition that land into the, is it all going to go to big ag and agri-farms and chemicals? Or are we going to make sure that there are policies in place to make sure that smaller, diverse landholders can have a chance to feed their local communities? I guess you know which side of the coin I'm on that one. So that's pretty much where we are. We're really, I've been working this year trying to get the film out to colleges and universities as a classroom material, because it's only 40 minutes in length, which we did intentionally for classrooms. But boy, that's a hard market to breach. So I don't know if that's going to be successful or not, but I carry on. And a lot more of our attention at this point will start. Another piece of it is we're looking at, I'm looking at faith-based communities, how to get it out to churches to share, because my goal at this point is to get the film to the places where veterans go to get support. And that's local vet centers, you know, because every community has one, or, you know, they may have an American Legion, but most communities have some kind of a vet center if they have any size. And churches and the schools, because those are the three places that veterans go to get support. And what we have found is that often they don't even consider agriculture. I mean, it hasn't ever crossed their radar. But when they do, you see the light bulb go off over their head. You know, it's like, oh my God, I could really, I want to do that. So I'm trying to get it out there. It's kind of hard because I'm fishing, you know. I'm going to people who don't know about it yet to engage with them. And so I hope to continue to be, you know, successful in distributing it and getting it out there, because I'm still sitting at about 600 or 700 copies I'd like to move and get them working. And the resource guide that we have inside of the film now makes, anybody could see the film, look at the resource guide, and know who to start calling and how to get it set up, you know, for funding and land and training and education and all of that. So I think it's a good package now. We would do a similar thing with the new normal for caregivers, is to have a booklet that's augmented by our website to really give them all the resources they need to start finding help. And it makes a big difference when you can hand a whole package to somebody and, you know, they don't need me at the front of the room. So thank you for your continuing support. At the end of the year, if you're doing giving, I do have a nonprofit status. Don't forget the home team. Thanks. Oh, questions? Yeah, Linda.
Do the veterans live in the schools or in farms rather when they have these programs?
Okay, so the question was, do the veterans live at the farms when they're getting the training? No, usually not. There's one farm in New York that what she does is have an old farmhouse, and she houses them there, and then she finds some jobs at farms in the community. So that's one program. There are many different kinds of programs, but housing is always an issue. Tiny homes is starting to edge in to a few of the farms, just to give some housing. But yeah, that's a little bit of a tricky part. Oh, we just did a really wonderful 5-minute piece for a program in Colorado called Veterans to Farmers, and they have a hydroponic training, which is growing in a water medium, you know, long troughs of water with nutrient water going past the roots. And then they have an aquaponic, which brings fish into the project. And they have a soil-based, and now they're starting a homesteading program up in northern Colorado. So we just did a 5-minute video, and we're starting to look at that as another possibility for monetizing and funding, is doing what I call micro-documentaries, because in a 4 or 5-minute piece, you can really tell the story of what a program is doing. And those are much more affordable for organizations to do, and they're very impactful because then they can use them for fundraising and they can use them for social media. So that's another way we're looking to try and monetize the business. Rick?
So those grants we get, the grants you said were $100,000 one year, nothing. Why don't they give them multi-year?
Oh, so the question is, why don't they give multi-year grants from the USDA? Good question. I don't know why they don't. I think that the thinking behind it is like, well, we'll just give you this boost to up-level your program or your organization or your farm or whatever. I think that they don't really have a place for this kind of model in the beginning farmer program. They're looking at it as you're just getting started as a farmer, rather than, oh, these are educational venues. So that's one of the things we're going to start looking at is how do we create a niche, in the languaging of the Farm Bill, or how do we do that? So those are some of the questions we'll be looking at, but I'll bring that one to the table too. How about some multi-year grants? Thank you. Any other questions? No? Well, thanks, team, for inviting me back.